Hello, and welcome to Africa News Plug, your home for bold, real, and unfiltered stories shaping Africa today. If it's your first time here, hit that like button, share with your friends, and subscribe to stay plugged in. Now, let's get into the heart of today's headline. A powerful message is making waves across social media, one that's shaking tables and challenging the silence. A young African woman has boldly called on the continent to rise and reclaim its stolen resources. But is Africa listening? In her stirring speech, she sheds light on a dark chapter in African history, the brutal colonization of Congo by Belgium. Under King Leopold II's regime, nearly 3.3 million Congolese lives were lost due to violence, forced labor, and systematic plunder between 1885 and 1908. She doesn't stop there. The speaker reminds Africa of its gold, cocoa, gas, and countless other riches that have been shipped off for centuries, while the people remain poor. She demands accountability from those still pulling the strings today, pointing to ongoing struggles in places like Biafra and questioning the silence of African leaders.
Hello everyone, this message is for my African and the Black race around the world. Here goes. To my people of Congo, Africa, and the Black race around the world, a transformative awakening is unfolding. In parts of Africa and across Black nations, we are rising. And with time and unity, we will see this awakening spread across the entire continent and beyond. One path to this awakening is through education, through truth, through sharing the right information. For too long, we have been dormant, divided. We have followed the European narrative and even some of our own to dictate our lives. They have conspired to keep us blind, to keep us brainwashed, to keep us miseducated, poor, divided, and at war with each other. But today, we are witnessing something powerful. An African leader is standing up, challenging the corrupt, defying systems built to serve the few and undermine many. I recently read The Slave Ship by Marcus Rediker. It chronicles the theft, the torture, the kidnapping, the killings, the rape, the violence, the enslavement of millions of Africans over 4 centuries. 12 million Africans were brought to the New World. Some sources say closer to 30 million. 5 million died during the Middle Passage. By the time slavery was abolished, 3.3 million were still working on plantations. For Americans, British, Danish, Dutch, French, Portuguese, and Spanish enslavers. By 1800, the slave-based economy had generated the equivalent of $3.3 billion in 2007 value. And yet, they called us lazy, unfit to govern ourselves. When they could no longer steal our people, they turned to our land. They gathered in what became known as the Scramble for Africa. They divided our continent. They dominated 90% of it, often with brutal violence. Belgium colonized Congo. 10 million Congolese perished. And later, Congo endured what is called Africa's World War, an estimated 5 million lives lost. All of it for our natural resources. Diamonds, sugar, salt, gold, iron, cobalt, uranium, copper, bauxite, silver, petroleum, natural gas, and cocoa beans. Resources that power the industries and technologies of today. Even after colonialism, they found new ways to loot. They pitted African nations against each other, just as they once pitted African chiefs against each other in exchange for human cargo. They gave them guns, they gave them lies. The president of France recently said, talking about Macron, if we leave African countries to manage on their own, now is not the time. Africa remains the least developed continent, and history shows we have a role to play in supporting its growth. A complete withdrawal could halt progress. There is still much work for us to do in Africa, and we believe they are not fully ready to thrive without our involvement. Let that sink in. Dear Africans, dear Black people, We must not forget the past. The growth they speak of is unilateral. These remarks are why we must be vigilant. We must be united now more than ever. The truth is setting us free, and at the forefront of this new revolution is Captain Ibrahim Traore. As he forges a new path of revolutionary leadership, let us remain vigilant. Let us question the deals being made. Let us ask who truly benefits. Let us unite behind this new era. Let us hold accountable those who seek to destabilize other nations. Homeland or death, we shall overcome. Thank you.
Her message? Enough is enough. Africa must unite, stand tall, and control its own narrative. This call echoes the voices of leaders from past independence movements. Only now it's 2025, and the stakes are higher than ever. Reactions on X, formerly Twitter, have poured in. Some compare her to revolutionary icons. Others lash out at today's political elite, especially in Nigeria, demanding a total shake-up. The conversation is hot, and it's growing. Meanwhile, another voice has joined the chorus, renowned economist Jeffrey Sachs. Speaking at a recent forum, he delivered a blunt truth. Africa's biggest challenge? Disunity. Sachs, who heads the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University, says if Africa's 55 countries don't come together fast, they risk falling further behind. He proposes a bold solution: continental free trade, massive infrastructure, and a single financial policy.
I find it very interesting and pertinent that Africa, China, and India right now have the same population, basically, 1.4 billion people each. The biggest operating difference, aside from poverty and the ecological conditions and so forth, is that Africa is 55 independent countries. India and China are unified states, albeit in a kind of federal arrangement or semi-decentralized arrangement in both cases to some extent. So Africa's biggest issue, in my view, is unity, creating a free trade area on the continent, organizing its infrastructure on a continental scale, having continental-wide monetary and financial policy, and really trying to replicate scale so that the internal market of the African continent and other benefits of scale can be achieved. And this is a huge political issue. Obviously, countries don't easily don't easily cede sovereignty to a supranational entity, but Africa is so far behind, so much in need of development right now, so vulnerable internally and externally, that I think the case can be made, and I'm certainly trying to make it all the time to African leaders, that they better create an effective union right now. And this is a message that I give all the time. Having said that, if the union can really be created, one can actually foresee a rapid growth period for Africa, which would be unprecedented, basically. And the reason is poor countries have headroom for rapid growth. This is the most basic idea in economic growth, which is that if you're capital scarce, the returns to investment are very significant. If you don't have electricity, it's great to add electricity. If you don't have roads, it's great to add roads. If you don't have rail, you get a really big return to adding rail. If you don't have high school completion, boy, do you get a big kick from going to high school completion. So you can identify the investment strategy that's needed. And I worked out in a recent study that I did with the African Development Bank a scenario for the next 40 years modeled on China's 40-year growth from 1980 to 2020, in which Africa becomes a high-income economy by 2063, which is their 100th anniversary of African unity. Now, just one added footnote to that. Africa was about 7% of the world population, if I remember correctly, in 1950. Today, it's about 18%. Africa is the only region of high fertility in the world right now. It's the last place with the demographic transition. It will have it, but it hasn't had it yet because it hasn't had the breakthrough to girls' education through high school and other things and urbanization and so on. So the transition will come, but in 20 years from now, perhaps. And this means that on a reasonable trajectory, I mean, plausible is what I mean. I don't mean good, but just plausible trajectory, Africa will have 2.5 billion people around mid-century, maybe 2055, 2060. And on the current UN medium forecast, which I don't think is accurate, but it's their medium forecast, Africa reaches 3.8 billion people by 2100 and constitutes 38% of the world population by 2100. Now, imagine if Africa grows rapidly in economic terms and has this population growth, Africa becomes actually a major part of the world economy, not a fringe part of the world economy, even by mid-century or by 2060. So this is my view of what should happen. It is a major political action that is required more than anything. It is the unity to say we're going to do this in one coherent step, because frankly 55 countries are not going to make it on their own, and 14 of them are landlocked, and landlocked countries can't even function if they don't have ports. So to put it bluntly, if Africa gets its political act together, and again, it was Europe that created this messy map, but if Europe gets its political act together, it's going to be a big part of the world in the 21st century.
On social media, many agree. Users are pointing fingers at what they call Africa's comprador class, local elites acting on behalf of foreign interests. They say it's time for a new kind of leadership, one rooted in African interests, not foreign approval. Africa is speaking through the voices of its youth, its thinkers, and its everyday people. The question is, will its leaders finally listen? Thank you for watching Africa News Plug, where we bring the real issues to the forefront. If this message struck a chord, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe. And remember, African voices matter. Let's keep them heard.